Knife. Tomorrow in a year.
My needle drops. Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and this is my album review of The Knife's Planning to Rock's and Mount Sim's Tomorrow in a Year. On this LP, the Swedish electropop duo The Knife take on some collaborators. I've already mentioned Planning to Rock, already mentioned Mount Sims, but to throw more names on top of the pile, this thing was commissioned as a soundtrack/opera for the Danish performance art group Hotel Pro Forma. And the subject matter? Charles Darwin, his work, and the big T theory of evolution, which isn't that unusual considering that this very same performance art group also put on a production about Leon Theremin, the inventor of the most untouchable musical instrument, the theremin. So that's the concept, which is pretty unusual, pretty experimental, so that must mean this thing is really great. So I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 because it's a perfect album, because it's experimental. Good. So in all honesty, this thing is a complete and utter mess printed to 2 discs, and it just throws abstract after abstract at you without actually pulling any of them together, which you would think would happen, considering that this thing is so heavily based upon a concept. And I feel like everyone's enamored with the concept more than they are the actual music itself. I can just imagine people in my head listening to this, hearing the noise and the dissonant tones and just thinking,
oh man, yeah, listen to that. It's like evolution. That's like things evolving, man.
In order to look at this LP as music, as a musical piece, we have to separate it from its concept, because its concept has little to nothing to do with the sound and the texture of this LP. The whole thing starts with these really glitchy electronic blips that build into this multi-layered drone, and this is where the operatic vocals first show up. Now, it feels like it's building towards something, and this really had me excited about the LP. I thought I was really going to be in for something very conceptual, very avant-garde, very perceptive. All this noise, all this feedback and distortion starts feeding itself into the mix, and then once it gets into the 3rd track, the whole LP just gets increasingly more and more difficult without rhyme or reason. The chords and the melodies get more dissonant and the sounds get harsher, and then these field recordings start introducing themselves, but it never really clicks to me as, genius. All I can say is it doesn't really stimulate me like a John Cage prepared piano piece, and it doesn't really make me squirm like a Merzbound noisescape. It doesn't put a chill up my spine like any given track off of Laurie Anderson's Big Science, and it doesn't horrify me like many of the dark ambient pieces on any Lustmord album. A lot of the keyboards and the noises just callously repeat themselves over and over, and I can hear it now. People are like,
oh, well, it's supposed to be simple, man. It's evolution, man.
So, because this thing is about evolution, we're just going to give it the green light to be boring. Karen Anderson, as Fever Ray, put together a pretty dark LP last year, and I know her brother makes some pretty experimental, strange stuff by himself, but still, I think their solo stuff is kind of a huge jump from what this LP is trying to do. And The Knife widely acknowledges that they have no prior experience scoring or even frequenting operas, and I think this album is an example of the train wreck that can happen when you approach avant-garde composition like A Blind Date. Now, the 2nd LP is very musical, and I guess you could say it's where this thing really pays off. It opens up with Annie's Box, which is very beautiful, very tonal, very somber, and it even opens up later into the track Coloring of Pigeons, which I gave a 9 out of 10 to on Track Reviews, a score I still stand by, and a fantastic piece of this LP. Now, even though Coloring of Pigeons is a really awesome track, after that song, the entire LP proceeds to go batshit insane and turn itself into a joke, throwing these 4-to-the-floor beats into the song Seeds, which sounds like it's made up of all these Fruity Loops, preset loops and sounds. And sort of to add insult to injury, they throw a track at the end of the album called The Height of Summer, which sounds dangerously close to Heartbeats. Yes, the song Heartbeats, that we all know and love. It's like an effigy of the track, and a big you to anyone who was expecting this LP to be anything interesting, fun, accessible, or cohesive. Now, to be honest, the Knife was commissioned to do this piece by Hotel Pro Forma, so we can only speculate how much artistic freedom they had over this LP, because they could just be making music to sort of fit to the very avant-garde experimental nature of this performance group. Plus, this thing is a performance piece. There's some footage on YouTube. Look for a link. And when you sit down and watch the whole thing, there could be so much more context given to this soundtrack. I just can't help but feel like for the entire duration of this album, there really should be some visual to go with this audio. I know a decent amount of people are going to and already have followed the Knife in this direction just because they're the Knife, and all music aside, this is a cool concept, and it is kind of an unusual direction for them to take their music in. But I unfortunately can't follow them in this direction. I'm just not into this LP, and can't help but feel like they sound like lightweights when you compare them to the heavyweights of avant-garde and experimental composition. But that's how I felt about it. If you listen to the LP, what did you like about it? What did you hate about it? Do you like this direction? Do you miss the old direction? Are they going to go back to that? Do you think? The Knife, in collaboration with Mount Sims and Planning to Rock, Tomorrow in a Year. Anthony Fantano. Forever.